A secret super weapon
The molecular scrambler, that is.
just fell into the hands
Hello there.
of the meanest, nastiest villain
Destroy them all!
ever.
Hey guys, Rascal here, and welcome to another Rascal Reviews. And once again, Mama Martinez is joining me for this.
Hello.
And we are covering the probably obscure movie by now, Garfield's Pet Force. Yes, I know you're looking at the title like, you're doing what now?
Poor excuse for superhero movies.
But before we start, be sure to like, subscribe, notification bell updates on my channel. I'm having always new content all the times, and thank you so much for watching. So, I wanted to do this because this just happened to come up all of a sudden when we were watching a movie, and at the time they were having movies that were coming out in the late 2000s, and there was a point where they had this trilogy of 3D animated movies for Garfield. And in this trilogy, they set up in this alternate world where Garfield and his friends and other new characters lived in this comic book world. And their job is to literally make the Sunday comic strip every week. And they literally act out panels and lines, take pictures, and it's sent to the real world. So that's how we get our comics. And it sounds fun for one movie or one episode. But the more they went on with this, the more it started to lose its charm. And they had 3 movies in this series. Garfield Gets Real, which was probably the best one.
Yeah.
Garfield's Fun Fest, which was an odd one to say the least. And then this one we're covering now is a trilogy, Garfield's Pet Force, which decided to just go off the rails to superhero movie.
It was the travesty of the Garfield franchise. It should have never happened.
Now, remember watching this as a kid because you bought me these movies as a kid, and it looks like that's what it was made for?
Because you had a Garfield obsession.
Right. So, it was fine for when I was little and watching it. And unfortunately, I don't think it's one of those movie series or things where you go back to it years later and you're like, wow, this was ahead of its time. This was really good. This is underrated.
It's one of those, I can't believe I watched that movie.
Yes. And you're just kind of looking like, oh gosh, why did you make this? And it's bad. There's no way to put it. But it's so bad you can't help but laugh at it. And that's part of why I wanted to review it with Mama, because it's something so bad you couldn't help but laugh at just how bizarre this movie's existence is. You went from a comic strip character coming to the real world, which was still animated, to them trying to get into a fun fest party on time and save an event, to save the world from devastation superhero movie. Comic books are in it again.
And a version of Garfield that should never exist.
Yes, Garzuka.
Like he's the opposite of his Earth persona.
I guess so, which, you know, think about it, that could have actually been funny. Like, how does this one, it's like, you think they're similar and they're not, but they're so drastically different. Garfield's lazy, out of shape, short and everything, and he got this muscle-bound, heroic, get the job done Garfield, and they didn't do anything with that. The entire superhero aspect just doesn't really get utilized at all. It just seemed like they wanted to do something specifically for an aesthetic to get kids to want to see it, and then that's it. There is no substance to this movie.
Absolutely not. And even when you're listening to some of the dialogue, it's entirely stupid and makes no sense. And you're listening to what some of these characters say. It's like, did you even read these lines?
Right.
As you were writing this stuff?
Right.
And telling voice actors to perform these lines? And I know they get paid to perform, but I feel bad for Frank Welker and the other people that were in this movie because it's probably like their most embarrassing performance, I should say, show to perform in. It's just terrible.
It was. And there isn't any point where you say, oh, well, at least that part was good. That part was funny. No. None of that was in here. So basically the storyline in here is that, well, keep in mind, they're in a comic book world. Well, they will also have comic books in the comic book world. I want you to remember that. This newspaper comic strip world has comics that, and so out in the comic world. So they focus on this universe where it's sort of a superhero sci-fi comic. And Vetvix, which is just Liz as a villain, really, gets a molecular scrambler ray. Yes, I'm not kidding. And she wants to take over the world, the universe with it. And it's supposed to mix people's bodies together and they become mindless zombies. Well, it's not much of a scrambler. All it does is swap people's heads and then make them kind of groggy. Yeah. And that's it. And then the pet force is led by Garzuka. And it's a muscle-bound superhero version of the characters, like that SpongeBob movie, that Sponge Out of Water, where they came to the real world and they were all superheroes. It's essentially the prototype version of that. And it's odious, startling, and abnormal, and it's one of the dumbest names.
And he's the only character who still cannot speak in here. You have Garfield and other characters who normally don't speak out loud actually speaking. Yeah. But not Odie. He can't say anything.
No, and I don't understand it. Because this universe establishes that Garfield and the characters can talk to people. Yeah. They can communicate with each other, no problem. But for some reason, Odie just stays as is and might go rub roll or something at some point. And it's just, who wrote this?
Yeah. Another thing that was really strange is they put a lot of, there was no way to put it, sexual innuendos or inferences in here. And especially one character who I think is supposed to be someone's assistant.
I think
and she's like director. 2 feet tall and she's got these extrapolated body assets. Yeah. And then she falls for Superman Cat Garfield, that's what I'm going to call him. Yeah. And then at the end of the movie, you see them telling them goodbye and then returning to their planet. Yes. And I said to Rascal, I said, the lady's gone. I think she sneaked on the ship. Yeah. And sure enough, this woman's hanging on his leg, sneaking on the ship. And you've got a villain who's very sexy.
In this version, yeah.
And I think for 2 of them, for her, I think they were referring to Beautiful Gorgeous.
Probably at the time that was made.
And because she looked too much like her in terms of the way she was designed. Right. And it was like, why did you put that in here?
Yeah, it was even
unnecessary,
fit.
Especially for Garfield.
Yeah, for Garfield and for kids. And yeah, if you want to be more direct, yes, there were older Garfield movies and specials from when the Garfield Friends show was on that did kind of have some innuendo in there, but not to the degree that this was. The most you had was when Garfield imagined he was a hardboiled detective, and you had the femme fatale that was asking for help, and yeah, you could tell they were playing off those old detective movies where they had the beautiful woman and sort of fell for Garfield and everything. Right. Yeah, they played on that because it was on purpose. Or something like Roger Rabbit, where it's done because that's part of the story, that's part of the style. You understood that.
And it's funny and it works.
Right. Garfield didn't play with anything that looked sexually attractive in any shape or form. I mean, look at John. Nobody in this universe was meant to look like because someone you could crush or simp on at all. But to have Liz/Vetvix sound like this, sound like Miss Bellum or Sedusa, and be this femme fatale that wants to take over the comic book world, then take over another comic book world because they jump out of that for some reason from a comic to another comic, and it just makes no sense to have that in here when you're supposed to have this superhero story.
True. And I think one thing that was also funny is Arlene, the cat.
The pink one? Yeah.
And you actually see them kissing here.
And it's so weird.
Yes. And they're acting like a couple. When in the regular series, it was always kind of left ambivalent. Like you kind of know they're dating. But Garfield acted as if he couldn't be tied down. And his major goal in life was to eat. Yeah. But in here, everything suddenly changed.
Yeah. And we get there 2 other movies before it. And yeah, they dated in here too. But it's still acting like they weren't even together for most of the movie because we focused on the superhero element. True. And then another thing is superhero element. It's supposed to be a superhero movie, but the main point of the trailer and the story doesn't get used. There's a point here where he says, these counterparts yes, we're gonna call them that, counterparts to his friends match the DNA. Take the serum, you get their powers temporarily help defeat the villain. First, it takes like 20 or 30 minutes for the stuff to kick in. Then they finally do get the powers. The powers aren't useful because after a while, their bodies are tired. And I'm not kidding you, like 5 minutes into them having the superhero powers, they start getting tired. It's okay, it's straightening out your bodies because your cartoon characters, they can't metabolize with it all the time and they're not meant for it. It's like MHA, but worse. And you're just sitting looking like, well, if they're too cartoony to handle the superpowers, that makes no sense. They should be able to defy all kinds of laws of physics and science and everything. They should be able to handle everything, but I guess they gave them a weakness. Leave it to them.
Yeah.
And then they all get captured anyway near the end. So it's like, what was the point of you coming here and giving them the powers if they were going to get defeated and they can't use them long term because their bodies aren't built for it? It was like, just like, why? This whole movie's a question mark.
Well, from what I understand, this movie was only profitable in Brazil.
Well, yeah, there's some weird thing they like to make.
And most critics gave it a 1.
A 1, yeah. Or maybe a half.
And that was generous. I'm sorry.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
So, again, like in other shows, the best thing about this movie was the voice cast.
Yes.
Frank Welker as Garfield and Garzuka and other voices. And it was so odd hearing him voicing Garfield because,
yes,
you know, there being other people who were famous for voicing him.
Right.
But I guess they wanted someone who could convincingly sound like a superhero.
Yes.
And effectively convey that. And he did,
Garfield.
But it still was a bad movie.
Right.
And you also had Jason Marsden as Normal, which was also weird.
Yeah.
Wally
Not that cutesy
Wingert
voice.
and John Arbuckle.
Yeah.
Neil Ross, Vanessa Marshall, Fred Tatasciore. Is almost like, hey, we want some real voice actors, some real voice acting stars for this terrible movie.
Yeah.
And that's what happened.
And what's worse is Jim Davis wrote it. Either he lost his touch with this, or he was told what to write, or put his name on it, because this doesn't feel anything like a Garfield comic strip or anything even outlandish but fun like Garfield and Friends, when they would get crazy and out there instead of surreal.
Well, he must have been offered a nice payday.
Maybe.
Kind of like The Crooked Man with Mike Mignola.
Maybe.
And this is what we got. What's the funniest thing is it was distributed by 20th Century Fox.
Oh, no.
And then
Disney owns it.
It was distributed by Sony Pictures under
What?
Columbia Pictures.
What?
And then it was acquired by Paws Inc. And I was also one of the producers. Also distributed by Velvet Octopus. This movie was all over the place. It's almost like they were trying to find a place that it could call home, but the trash can is the only place it's
really, yeah.
going to end up.
Right? So I really wanted to cover this because it's something so bizarre. It is only 73 minutes, but I feel like you're watching a nearly 2-hour MCU movie. And it is one of the most baffling movies to ever exist, whether it's a superhero movie, as a Garfield movie, as a DVD movie. It's just like, do you even remember this? Because we want to know in the comments. Have you actually seen this, or was it on your radar as a kid, or did you do remember this and you thought it was a fever dream? Let me know in the comments below. And thank you, Mom, for joining me yet again for this next Superhero Month review.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. And we'll be seeing you in the remaining ones for the month, so stay tuned for those.
Yep.
And be sure to subscribe to SoFab/Mom Entertainment for all sorts of videos that you will find to be quite fun.
Thank you. Look forward to seeing you guys.
Yes. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Rascal Entertainment.
And I'm Mom Entertainment.
Have a fantastic day.
Peace.